This week on the podcast, I am so excited to bring on one of my friends, LaRose. Lauren is a healer through and through. She is so talented with so many multiple modalities such as herbal medicine, nutrition, aromatherapy, flower essence therapy, the art of alchemy, and creating deep, rich ritual and ceremony with women. She is truly your modern day witch. She has had the privilege over the last 12 years to train under Indigenous herbalists, naturopathic and functional medicine doctors, traditional Chinese medicine doctors, and wise woman birth keepers. She has many skills, but one of her biggest skills, in my personal opinion, is getting women to gather safely in community and holding deep healing rituals and ceremonies to really help us to connect with the divine feminine and to heal deep ancestral, I don't know if I want to call it trauma or if it's just coming home to our ancestral roots. In this conversation today, we're going to explore a lot around feminine wisdom, our intuition, and about the power of ritual and how creating what she thought would be a simple little potluck supper turned into one of Canada's biggest, most well-known women's festivals, the Wild Rose Festival. I cannot wait to share this conversation with you and for her to just share her deep wisdom of why all this matters, why plant medicine, why ritual, why healing the feminine is so important for women. So let's dive into this great conversation, this multi-layered conversation with Lauren LaRose. Welcome back. I am so excited that you have joined me again in the Aligned Womb, Aligned You podcast. I'm Kate Nagai, and I am your host and womb guide on this journey. I'm here to help you to lean into the language of your menstrual cycle so that you can align yourself and awaken and activate to your womb wisdom to live the most inspired life. I am so excited to jump into this episode and to dive into today's topic. So let's get started. Hello, Lauren. I am so excited to have you here. I think it's insane. How long have we known each other now? 2017?
I was gonna say probably close to a decade, or at least like knew each other from before through the
We definitely
community.
knew each other from before because
Yeah.
I knew you when you worked at the birthing center, and I didn't
Yes.
know you, but I bought your teas there all the time because I was
Yeah.
an acupuncturist. And so you came into my field of awareness then. And then from there, it just kept growing. And it's been this most amazing journey. I've learned so much from you, and I'm so excited for the audience to hear more about your wisdom and your journey of who you are and how you got to where you are, because I really think that you're superhuman. I do not know how the hell you do everything that you do, but good on you, because I'm like, someday I will have that energy reserve. I will be able to do those things.
Yeah, it's a superpower, really. I think that a lot of it has to do with my human design.
Ah,
So I'm a manifesting generator. I'm also a Gemini, so I'm able to like hold multiple things at once. I have a super huge capacity that's just like come from a place of my own serving of my own capacity, right? Like that
yeah.
reciprocity of making sure that I'm taking good care of myself so I can take good care of others. And it hasn't always been this way, but um, yeah, here we are.
I'm a generator. So I'm just like, and it's funny because I just had this conversation with my husband a few nights ago because he's a manifesting generator.
Yeah.
And he just recently started up his own company. And every night he comes home, and before he started up, like, he had always asked me questions, and I was always giving him feedback, like a generator, right? Like, I'm like, here's the systems, like, this is what you do from point A to D. And so then he's in the midst of it and he's not following any of the systems. And so
Uh-huh.
he'd come home and I'm like, so what did you do today? Did you get this done? He's like, no, I'll get that done soon. Like, I'll get to
Yeah.
it. I'm like, you're missing all the steps. Like, you're just going to the center.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
They can be rule breakers for sure.
it's so beautiful because he does his own thing and it still works out beautifully. Like, it always amazes me how everything works out in his way. And it does teach me about like there's more than one way to do things, Kate. There's
Right.
more than one way to live in this world, and it's not just about systems and structures. So, but yes, I love that you're a manifesting generator. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about who you are and what you do, or you have many different roles, but you used to be in school to become a nurse.
Yeah. So when I graduated high school, did the whole thing, trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do. Nursing just felt like the most organic kind of calling for me because I just wanted to help heal people. And I
Mm.
didn't know anything outside of that kind of realm, right? I was 19 years old, right? Like just kind of figuring out who I was still. Enrolled into nursing and very quickly realized that there was a misalignment there and it wasn't for me. And much to my parents' dismay, I ended up withdrawing and then immediately going to India. So it was your cliche, like eat, pray, love moment, but just felt this like really deep calling to go. And so I was 20 years old at the time, went solo and traveled all over India for 2, 3 months and just got exactly what I was looking for, even though I didn't know what I was looking for exactly. But it definitely dawned on me what it is that I wanted to do. And it was outside of the box, right? Outside of the box of healing. And so I came back and then pursued a 4-year diploma in herbalism at the Wild Roses College in Calgary. And then it just kind of built momentum from there.
That's amazing. It's really interesting. I was just yesterday listening to a podcast on Kate Northrup's podcast, Plenty, and she was interviewing a priestess on there, Sarah Jenks. And this is what Sarah was talking about, is that so many of us go into these modalities of healing, like as a nurse, as a doctor. She even mentioned like one of her clients went in as an ultrasound technician to only find out that she was actually a sound healer, right? Like, so we go into these things that the world has structured as like, this is how you heal. And then
Mhm.
once we're in it, we're like, this is misaligned and I don't know what it means and where to go.
Right.
But then we often see, like, I have so many people in my life that have become nurses and then have left and become coaches or herbalists or sound
Right.
healers, right? Like they branch out because they know they want to heal, they want to help.
Hmm.
But this way that our society has kind of built us up to believing is healing is not really the true ancestral lineage of healing,
Exactly.
which
Yeah.
leads us into the feminine, right? Of how the feminine has been erased and how,
Mhm.
healers, herbalists,
Mhm.
midwives were
Mhm.
all the first people to be erased when they were trying to erase the sacred feminine from the world.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
And I know like this is like, I think this is becoming more and more open conversation for a lot of people.
It is.
I think a lot of people are still really afraid of it. And as I think we should be somewhat, not because we should be afraid of it, but because this is still held in our genes, this memory, this fear, right? Because it was a real thing. Like we might want to
Mhm.
believe that it didn't actually exist. And in fact, a few years ago, you could have told me about witch burning. I was like, that wasn't that thing. Like,
Right.
how could that have really happened? And then it's
Yeah.
like, shit, that did
Uh-huh.
happen.
And so much of the documentation and the history is also erased, but there's still an innate knowing for so many of us.
Hmm.
And also, I think it also coincides with being in this kind of like generation now. I think there's also a disconnect between our immediate ancestor line, right? And so there's a disconnect between us and our grandmothers, and there went potentially somewhere for some people there was a stop of knowledge sharing. And so now we are just within this system, kind of just going according to, the plans, if you will. And there's that block of ancestor wisdom that's just completely missing. And so that rings true for me, especially because I never got to meet my great grandmother, who was a traditional Métis midwife and lived off of the land and had a bunch of children, and she was also a multitasking mama of force, and she really, her role was very controversial at the time. Obviously midwifery was not a regulated thing, and she was doing this like on reserve, and in a very traditional way. And that was not passed down to me. She passed away as I was right before I was born. And so that got lost in the mix. And so the more that we connect to ancestor medicine, that the more we go like, ah, okay, like this is in my blood down the line in some way. And we're here to re-inherit that, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so some of the ways that you have started to remember, let's call it remember your ancestral lineage is through herbalism,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also through ceremony.
Yeah, yeah. And I think both of those things weave together because herbalism can be so many things. It can be clinical, um, and in a really good way, right? And with deep respect. It can also be ceremony. It can also be an art form. It's also a way to connect. It's also a way that we decolonize. It's also a way that we come into right relationship with the land. So it's like herbalism itself is so multifaceted and it's just so much more than, a tincture bottle. There's so much more that comes from behind that, right?
Mhm.
But herbalism kind of started out as my very first passion. And it was in a very clinical way, right? Because I, again, was in nursing before this. So I still had this very clinical mindset and a totally different trajectory for myself. I thought that I would be working in clinic, like potentially in like an integrative medicine clinic, like I was working in Lucina for the rest of my life. I thought that that was going to be my path, was this very kind of clinical approach. And then it just changed over time throughout my own journey, throughout my own healing journey as well. I had like a healing crisis that happened for me in my own infertility journey that just kind of opened me up to the possibilities of infertility being a really spiritual experience for me and a path of trust. And it kind of cracked open that whole new realm of spirituality. And that's kind of where things started to begin, was within that journey. And then that path took me not into a 180, but just kind of like a pivot in
Mhm.
terms of like where I was able to take it and connect, like bridging herbalism and bringing women together in ceremony and helping women remember their inherent right to heal, right? And connecting them back to the land, which I think is such an important piece of all of this.
How how much resistance did you feel or fear? I think those are the two words that come to my mind. Did you experience shifting from very clinical lens, even though it's an alternative practice, into more of a sacred lens? Because this is where I am really struggling. Like I really resonate with that right now. Of and it's really interesting how every time I start to get a little too focused on trying to appeal clinically to the menstrual cycle,
Mm,
universe kind of smacks me upside the head and is like, "Hey, remember there's a sacredness here, right?" And so
yeah.
it was, I think, 2 years ago, I joined a year-long priestess training program where we went into the 13 archetypes of divine feminine. And I remember telling my husband, "Okay, I'm going to invest this like several $1,000s into this priestess training." And he was like, "For what?" It's like, "You don't know." And he's like, "Well, what is a priestess?" I'm like, "I don't know." Like, it was so foreign to me because I didn't even grow up in a church. So for me,
Mm,
like, this was like, I don't know why, but this has come into my field 3 times in 1 month. And there's
mhm,
like this tingling in my body that I'm supposed to take this training. And I have no idea what it is. I have no idea what we're going to learn. Like, I just remember being so incredibly lost, but feeling like I had to do it. And I took it and it was the most, and people ask me about it now and I'm like, I don't know how to put it into words, but it was the most transformational and I want to bring it into my work. But I think for me, there's this like deep anchor inside me of some ancestral trauma that's going, is it
mhm,
safe yet? Is it safe
mhm.
yet to bring this into your work? And so every time I get a little bit more into the sacred spiritual, then all of a sudden my my mind, it's not even my body, my mind's like, hey, how about you take this training that's
Right.
going to teach you how to eat for PCOS.
You're
Right?
right.
Like,
Right.
it's
Right.
like, let's get very like magnified on this one thing and get very clinical again. And then, so like, I
Mhm,
feel like I'm constantly in this tug of war of like, I know a lot of the clients that come to me because they feel broken and they feel like they need healing. And they're coming with me because they're hoping for like very functional, like direct orders on what they need to do.
Right.
But yet my body keeps pulling me in this spiritual realm. And so I'm in this tug of war. And that sounds a little
Mm.
bit like maybe potentially what you were like at Lucina Center.
Yeah, I think like okay, so for me there was never really a tug of war. I just realized that I could integrate both of those things and that both of those things were absolutely necessary. And I think I wanted to serve in a very holistic way, right? Where I'm addressing the whole body. And so for me, it just kind of like opened up another level of like, here's another way that we can really integrate all of these very functional, practical things that we are doing so that it's not just happening in one level, right? And so for me, it just made sense. There was no tug of war for me because I was just like, it comes together.
Is
But
this the manifestor generator in you?
yeah,
Is there a
probably.
generator in me that's like, where's the structure?
Right. It's like exactly. So I think in terms of the resistance, though, there was definitely resistance. And I think it could have been a combination of imposter syndrome because, like,
Mhm.
who am I to, and even still to this day, who am I to, lead these women through this? And until I shifted that perspective of being like, I'm not leading anyone, I am just way showing. And that comes down to me doing the work myself, right? And um, showing that there's other ways that are possible. I have nothing to do with that experience. I'm just way showing how this can be integrated, both of these things, and that they can be simultaneously true, and that they can, we can ebb and flow through the spiritual matter, the physical matter, on a day to day until we take what we need.
Mhm.
But the resistance that I had, so when I finally kind of like reclaimed this, being like, there's so much more than this clinical piece of it. There is like some deep ancestor wisdom coming through. There's also some um, a connection to the plant world that from an energetic perspective that I started to open up to, right? And this is like from using like flower essence therapy. And honestly, instead of just being like, here's a formula and here's, these dried herbs, it's actually going and connecting with the live plant and like really feeling a relationship with them, right? So it kind of took me out of just this, again, very kind of like prescriptive model to actual connection that I fervently stepped into my um, truth as a witch and claimed that name. Now, this is 15 years ago, okay? And so much has changed since then. And when I stepped forward and said, like, I'm claiming myself as a witch, there was so much resistance, not really felt by me because I was standing so strong in that, but from others who were very deeply triggered, even just by that word,
Mhm.
right? Because there was so much negative connotation to the word witch. And so I obviously knew at that point, I'm like, ooh, this is controversial. I didn't realize how controversial this would be, especially in a very uh but like potentially like very like Catholic kind of spaces,
Mhm.
right?
Well, and it goes deep because I read a book called The Burning Woman, and in there she talks about the witch and about the letter W. And in schools, like anytime someone says the word witch, it's automatically with a picture of someone with a green face, a big
Yeah,
wart, someone that's really scary. Like,
right,
never do we draw a witch that looks pleasant or looks
right,
like a healer. So, like, this
right.
was like, this is what we're teaching very subtly to
Yeah.
our children all the time that witches are scary people.
Yes, exactly. And like that is like through caricature, even now, our children, it's funny even having, little girls myself, and even the things that they pick up through media or from talking to other like children. So when we talk about witch, right? I'm already, they're 4 and 5, having to like already start to like deprogram that in their head because of how fiercely that image, that caricature comes up in their brains. of what they think a witch is. And like that's my main goal as a mother is, I mean, one of the main goals, obviously, but to help them understand the true meaning of that word and like the real power that comes behind that, especially as little women.
Hmm.
Mm,
So incredibly true. So I'm going to circle back a moment here because you said something in what you just shared about, who am I and who is coming to me, like that imposter syndrome, which
mm,
it's really interesting because I know your story a little bit about how, like, from your herbalism, you started creating ceremonies. You created Moonwell, which was full moon and new moon ceremonies, which, by the way, happy new moon or
oh
happy new
yes, that's
moon.
right. New
Happy
moon in
new moon.
Gemini.
But so you created these rituals and you did that for a few years, but then all of a sudden COVID hit. And I love the story. I love the story so much. And I've heard so many times from you about how COVID hit, you came out of COVID, and you and a friend were like, hey, we should have a potluck. Let's just invite a few of our friends and have this potluck because we're no longer in restrictions. And let's come back as women in community, right? Because you had been holding rituals, you've been holding ceremonies, and COVID stopped everything. So then it was like, we can come back in person. And it turned into a festival that now is like worldwide. People are coming from every country to this festival, and it's ran for 3 years. We're going into year 4 right away here. But going back to that, who am I? Who's going to come for me? You held a potluck and you built a very well established, well known festival of how many women? 700? Is that about right?
This year's 1,000.
1,000 women gather on land, like you said, circling back again about how it's about coming back into the land, coming back into connection. This is all held outdoors where we are honoring the land, where we are going back into ritual, where we are going back into reclaiming the feminine through guest speakers and through workshops. And oh my gosh.
So
So
much
who are you?
deliciousness.
Why would people come to your potluck?
I think like now I've obviously had lots of time to really these last couple years have been so crazy, right? It have been so rich and so abundant and so full that I think it wasn't until this year I've been really able to integrate a lot of that. And I think, of course, there's always going to be imposter syndrome when you're about to do something big, right? It's like about when we're about to give birth and then those fears come up and we're like, oh my gosh, but what if I can't do it? Or, what if something bad happens? Or what if I'm not a good mother? Or what if I'm not like, the mother that I thought that I would be? And it's like going through that, the birth experiences, in a true way, obviously twice, and then, rebirthing myself and birthing big things like this. It's like you're going to meet new versions of yourself every single time. And
And the
right.
truth, the truth is that once you get into that birthing process, you can't turn back.
Exactly. And you're like, this is what is, it's all happening for me, right? And so I think the imposter syndrome is a blessing in a way because it just reminds us that we're about to do something big that we've never done before. And it's so brave. It's so brave to take these risks and it never ends up exactly how you thought that it would, and it ends up being better and exactly what you needed every
Mhm.
single year. And so I even I talk about this in opening ceremony a lot at the festival about how, we feel like maybe as women, when we come into a space like this, especially when we're around other women and how, as we know, how deep that sisterhood wound can go and that feeling of comparison and that feeling of competition, like, am I worthy enough to be here?
Mhm.
And it's like, that is so true and so valid because like I feel that same way standing up in front of 300, 500, 800, 1,000 women, and it's totally valid.
Mhm.
It's totally valid just given what women have been indoctrinated into over the course of our lifetimes, and these really um you know formative experiences that happen for us in childhood with other women, or witnessing our mothers, or any of those things, and like deep ancestral wounds, all of that stuff tends to come up to the surface when we are you know daring to take these risks, right? And to put ourselves in potentially uncomfortable positions. And I think for women who even attend the festival feel those butterflies in their stomach, and they're going, what is the butterflies? What, like, why is this happening for me in a somatic way, right? When they first kind of step onto the land. And I think that there is just so much wisdom in that. And I think that when we can be in a place where we can de-armor,
Mm-hmm.
right? And really get to, really understand our full worth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And take this time to really invest in ourselves. And all of those things can be so scary as women, right? And so that I know that happens across the board for so many of us in the weekend and beyond.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, yes.
but it can be such a truly healing experience where you are able to learn more about yourself
Mm-hmm.
in small ways, in really big ways. Some women leave the land completely changed, and that just feels like such an honor, um, to hold space for that, because I just know that at the end, that change, that shift, that um, her willingness to um, really be with herself and to make some necessary changes that she needs to make moving forward, that's all going to pour back into community, right? And that's going to fill the cups of so many others. That's going to, create a space for her to be a way shower for other women too, right? And this is these ripple effects, big or small, are what are going to change the world.
Mhm. I had one client that went to the festival last year, and she reached out to me afterwards going, I just like, she's like, I don't even know how to put it into words, but I left exhausted
Yeah.
because there was just so much remembering. Like, it wasn't like she went back and was like, okay, I'm going to change all these things. I'm going to become this person. She's like, instead, it was almost like this visceral response where her cells just remembered something that she forgot. And she could feel shifts happening, but she didn't know how to put it to words. And I
Yeah.
think that's the magic of it, is that this festival is something that is so deeply healing on a level that is without language, really, right? Like, it's not about going, I'm going to go to this workshop and then I'm going to go attend this presentation and then I'm going to have my tasks of to-dos, which personally as a generator, I would love, but like walk away going, okay, here's how I'm going to become a better human being. Instead, a lot of it is just a release that you didn't even know that it had to
Mhm.
happen. And it's
Yeah.
such a beautiful container, and it's a safe container. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not quite there yet. I'm gonna get there. One of these years at the Wild Rose, it's gonna happen. You can mark it on your calendars. But my girlfriend who I brought along with me last year, she's for years said, one day, 'cause she lives on a farm, she's like, one day you're gonna come to my house and we're gonna dance around naked around a fire, Kate. You just wait, it's gonna happen. Right. And I'm like, I'm not there yet. I'm not there. And so when we went to the festival, she was like, is it okay if I ditch you? I'm going to go swim naked in the river with all the other women. And I was like, go for it. Right. So she went on Saturday into that. And Sunday morning, she was like, okay, you're coming with me. We're going to go. And I'm like, it's like dancing around the fire. I'm not quite there yet. I will get there, but I'm not there. She's like, you
Mhm.
know what? How about you just come with us and sit on the bank? You don't have to get naked. You can
Yeah.
sit there. The rest of us don't care. Like, this is not about you watching us. It's about you feeling safe with us. Right. And it was
Mhm.
something that she said in that I was like, that's what this is about.
Yeah.
That is what this community is about. It's not about seeing like physical bodies or physical trauma or physical anything. This is about a deep inner connection with women.
Right.
And it was just so beautiful that you can be in space, and you see that with so many women, because women come full on. Like, that's what I love about this festival, is that I think everyone lets a little bit of their secret self out that they wouldn't
Yeah.
necessarily do in normal life.
Right.
And they just they don't care. Like, and nobody, like, everyone just walks around
Mm.
every variation, and
Yeah.
there's no feeling of anything. There's no judgment. There's
Mhm.
no identifying with anything. It's just like, oh, there's a
Mhm.
really beautiful woman, right? Like, it's
Yeah. Yeah, and I actually love that about wild roses specifically is that there's so much diversity, and so there isn't a type of women who
Hmm.
goes to our event. You know, it's not, you don't have to wear a certain thing. There's no dress code. There's no, you don't have to be a certain way. We have so many women from so many different walks of life, different like such a vast age group and so much diversity within that of different expressions. And I think that that is so beautiful to see
Hmm.
so many people who come for the same reason in their heart, of just
Yeah.
connection and um, self-discovery. And we all look and think a totally different way, and we're here to learn from each other, right? And I think that one of my biggest things that I hold in my energy field, especially as someone who grew up being bullied, and I talked about this a lot, is that for me, the sisterhood wound ran really deep.
Hmm.
Is that the space I want to hold is one that does not have judgment, where people can just relax their belly, where they can just, wear what they want to wear that's the most authentic to them, even if that's being naked all weekend long,
Yep.
and just show up fully in their full humanness and just be themselves. And it's like, this is how we find our people truly, right? And we can create such meaningful, lasting connections and friendships and relationships when we can show up in a space where, again, we can de-armor, where we don't have to be a certain way. We can just be ourselves. And that authenticity shines, right? And there's just this feeling of safety that is held by everyone on my team, of cultivating that safety, like through and through and through. We've thought about a million things of ways that we can create safety for women, because safety is something that is
Hmm.
so rare as women, to be able to come into. And, we obviously, in saying that too, like, we are never going to create the ultimate safe space, but our goal and our mission is to create safer spaces for all women from all different walks of life, right?
Yeah.
And it's up to each also individual to also hold that safety for another sister too. And when that all those pieces come together, then there is just an awakening
Hmm.
that happens, because we're just able to just really drop into, who am I? What do I need? Just really touching base with ourselves, potentially for the first time in our entire lives, for
Hmm.
so many women, of being like, this is just for me, as it is for the collective. And that's the feeling of the village, right?
Yeah.
It's that reciprocity, right? And I think that's what gets reawakened in our bones, of this matriarchal way of being is the way it's always supposed to have been. And this is the way that it was before. And I remember this now. I can remember this feeling of safety and of connection, and all of those things in which we give and receive and work together, and are, really have each other's backs in a real way.
Hmm.
And I think it's just what we're doing is just like a very small, like, micro of what inevitably we want to see in the macro, in how we are showing up with ourselves, with our families, with our communities, and like the world at large, of what's possible.
Well, and I think like even though you're doing it at a micro level, the magnitude or the energetic outstream is at the mega level, right? Like I
Yeah,
do
yeah.
feel like it really pours out. Because now I have attended the festival for 2 years. I'm going on my third year. And I remember the first year I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna come and I'm gonna like help. I was part of the healers village. Like that's one of the elements that you have is a healers village there for people that need to have a little extra support. And I was like, I'm just gonna be there to be this big support. And I
Mhm.
remember going, and I was booked solid. Like there was not a breathing time. I could barely eat. And I remember going, but I feel like I missed something. Like it
Yeah.
just felt like I'm here, but I'm not here. And so the second year, and that year, I also drove back and forth from the city to the location every day
Oh,
because I had what was he? He was two at the time, I think, at
right.
home, a 2-year-old. So I was like, I've got to be home for bedtime. But I'd
Mhm.
get up at 5 in the morning because I would have people booked at 7 in the morning before
Oh
everything
my
got
gosh.
started. So like I was like constantly, I was just giving and giving and giving.
Yeah.
And I was like, I missed something. And so
Yeah.
last year I was like, you know what? And this is actually a really magical story. So last year I was like, you know what? I'm going and I'm not coming home. I'm only going to do one workshop there and then like teach, facilitate
Yeah.
one workshop. And then I am going to take the rest of the weekend and see what I missed because I knew it. I could feel I missed something and I
Mhm.
wanted to be part of it.
Yeah.
And so I drove in my little SUV there and I was like, it's only me. I'm going to sleep in the back of my
Yeah.
car. Right. I'm like, I don't need to set up a tent. It's just me. I like car's big enough and I can get dressed outside my car because everyone's naked. It doesn't matter. I was like, this is fine. I'm just in my car. So I drove in Friday morning. By Friday afternoon, due to the universe, I got to share a yurt with someone because the friend that they were bringing got COVID that morning and couldn't come. And so
Mhm.
she just gifted me the extra bed, which it turned out to be somebody that I actually already knew. Like we've met once or twice. She came to one of
Yeah.
my workshops I taught, but we weren't like friends. Like she was
Yeah.
someone that attended my stuff, right?
Yeah.
And we followed each other on Instagram. And it was like through somebody I was friends with, it was like, hey, I have a friend who might have a place for you to stay. And I thought it was a trailer, right? I didn't think it was like a yurt. And so then she was like, brought me to this person. And I was like, I know you. She's like, I know you. So
Oh.
then my first weekend away in 9 years from children, I got
Mhm.
to stay in this beautiful yurt where often I would leave just to read a book outside by the trees because I needed that energetic break. But it
Mhm.
was so like it was magical and it was beautiful. And I was like, this is what every human needs. And it's my mission to like tell as many people about it. In fact,
Mhm.
my husband in his new position has told his receptionist about it. And she's like, how have I never known about this? And so now she's going to be probably coming because she's looking at the website right now. And so, like,
Oh.
this is it. My husband realized how healing it was for me. And like, this is a non negotiable now, right? Like, I
Yeah.
have to do this. But
Mm.
one of the things that I saw last year that I witnessed that I thought was so beautiful, and it really held a bigger symbolic message for me. And I don't think, and probably the people there were like, I never thought of that. But I seen a grandma, I want to say she was probably in her 80s,
Mhm.
with probably a granddaughter
Yeah.
attending the festival.
Yeah.
And all I could think about was, wow, you feel that safe in your family history that
Mm.
you're in this healing space with your elder or with your grandchild,
Yeah.
right? Like, because it may seem simple, but we rarely, I think, as humans, bear
Mhm.
all of our vulnerabilities to our family.
Right. Yeah. We have, I think every year this grows and it makes me so emotional how so many women feel they come for the first time alone, being like, I don't know what's going to happen. And I have a sense that this is going to be, big and transformative for me. And potentially they're maybe uneasy about bringing someone with them. They're like, I just need to do this on my own
Up.
first. And every year to witness how the the groups and the crews kind of grow, right? And they grow through relationship met like that where the people have met at the festival.
Mhm,
Um, and people who are bringing their mothers or their grandmothers, right? Or their really close friends being like, no, we have to do this together. And that piece of it makes me so emotional because I have a very, very, very close relationship with my mom. She's my best friend,
mhm,
and I grieve so much for women who don't have that. And then when they get to a space where they attend one time and the second time they're like, my mom needs this, and this is how we are going to heal together
mhm,
in our and we're going to heal actually our line of
mm,
women when we attend something like this together where there's no distractions, it's just us going on a journey together, and just the healing that can happen for your past, your ancestors, and for the children that come after you. And that piece of it makes me really it humbles me deeply, and it also just makes me so emotional because I sometimes forget about the bigger impact about that. Especially as the founder, when you're focused on the details and the production and all of that stuff, that when it all comes together, this is why I cry so much at the festival.
We all cry at the festival. It's
Yeah.
okay.
But I cry because I have just like deep honor and gratitude because you know we can get like in life so focused on the details and all of those things, right? How it all comes together, that when you finally kind of zoom out and step back and go like, look at the impact of this, like that is just, it's unbelievable. And that's what fuels me to keep going and
Yeah.
to want to continue building and building and building, right? And try to reach as many women and make it as accessible to as
Mhm.
many women as possible so that they can come despite any of their barriers that they're experiencing, because I think it's just their work is so important.
It is so important. And, after last year, and I think my mom's kinda curious now because 'cause
Mm,
I've gone well, this will be my 3rd year, and she's always come here to help watch the kids while I'm at
yeah,
this festival. And there's a part of me that's always like, "You should really come." Like, I know that she needs to, but then there's also a part of me that's like, "I don't know if I'm strong enough to hold what you're gonna process yet."
yeah,
And so it's like, I need this for me. I have to process some stuff first. I need to be
yeah,
like, I need to be more rooted, and I don't know, and like, and that's it's not it's not fair. She should be able to go. She hasn't asked yet, and if she asked, I'd be like, "Totally, like, you need to
yeah,
come. If
yeah,
you're asking about it, then you need to come." But there's a part of me that feels like I need to push it for her to come, but then a part of me is like, "Can you hold? Can you hold?" And I think that's the beauty of what I've witnessed at Wild Rose, is so often when you're there, you could be sitting by people that you know or by strangers and nobody's talking, and it's not uncomfortable,
mhm,
it's just and it's not even processing, like, you're not in your head, there's just something happening deep internally
mhm,
that it just requires silence, and everyone's
mhm,
just they're holding space without actually saying anything, which is beautiful,
mhm.
and yeah, it's just a really amazing experience.
And I think there's no discomfort. So one of the things that I really love about the kind of like the culture that we've built is that how often is it in a public situation that, you're walking towards somebody and you're making eye contact and smiling, going, hi, how are you? And like checking in and like, you look beautiful today. And just like the compliment explosion, the hugs, all of the things that
Mhm,
come from being in a space like that, of just being so open
mhm.
of just being so open. And I think that that is just like that's one of my favorite parts about the festival, is just like seeing women who've been put in a situation where maybe they have to pair up together, for example, and they
Mhm,
have to then they get this opportunity to open up, and it's like, wait, you're not a stranger. Like, you're like, you realize in that moment, like, we have this sisterhood and this connection, right? That is um, in our disconnected world, like, we just don't really get those opportunities to really have that heart melt moment, if you will, right? That bleeds into how we show up in the everyday, the normal world, of how we can have that heart to heart connection with a stranger, even just the person who's begging your groceries, like, I think it just, we so deeply desire that connection, and we need connection more than ever after the last few years that we've been through. And, that really is like a full circle into why we started this in the first place. It's just that yearning for, connection and just like being together.
which really at its roots goes back to the divine feminine, right?
Yeah.
Divine feminine is all about being in sisterhood,
Mhm.
being in what's the word I'm looking for? Like healing and
Yeah.
giving, and
Yeah.
but not giving for the sake of giving so someone depletes you. It's like it's a
Mhm.
receiving and a giving, right? Like
Yeah.
when you talk about healing the sisterhood wound, that's really what this festival is, even if that wasn't the original intention. But
Yeah.
coming into community, coming into ritual, coming into ceremony, and how much detail you've put into this festival that is not in your face, but so subtle
Mhm.
that it's so bright, right? Like, and when I say it's not in your face, I mean like it's not meant to be like, hey, stop here, take awareness here. It's
Yes.
there, but
Yeah.
you always like it's so bright that you see it, right?
Mhm.
We see this with the red dresses that you guys hang. We see this with how last year you called in some counselors and support staff so
Mhm.
that you had a tent where people could come and debrief if everything got
Mhm.
too heavy, some trauma informed
Mhm.
practitioners to be there. You see this in that you've created a healing community where, or the healer's village, where people can come and receive physical body touch
Mhm.
to help them move
Mhm.
through whatever they need or just to relax deeper into it. You
Yeah.
see this with, and I have a girlfriend who's coming with me this year, and she's just like, I don't know, like this is a lot of people in a big space. How can this not feel overwhelming? And I was like, the way it's spaced out,
Mhm.
it's not a far walk, but yet
Yeah.
everything feels so far apart.
Right. It's
And it,
true, right?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's the land is literally perfect for this gathering. We couldn't have asked for a better location because of just the way that the land feels and it's able to hold it all like so beautifully. And the
Mhm.
transitions, I think, also matter, right? Where say you walk away from Rosebud stage having this big experience, right? And then that walk back up to like the hub, to the marketplace, is just this nature trail for you to like decompress. And you're in silence because you're walking through the healer's village. And it like just everything, the way that we've sort of organized it has it gives process and reflection because we're just in nature. And
Yeah.
it's the best place to be doing this kind of work. And ultimately, I want to say that too, is that because we've curated so many different experiences that you have, it's really choose your own journey. And
Mhm.
we never force anything on anybody, right? So you can decide how deep it is that you want to go. You can decide what it is that you want to do. You can like really exercise your own autonomy the whole weekend because there's just so many different experiences happening. If you just wanted to, spot up the whole weekend and get massages and facials and go to the Nordic spa and just retreat and just sleep and be in nature, you 100% could do that and it would be so worth it. It's worth in its weight in gold just to have that experience alone, let alone all of the other things that we have happening, right? So it's really like a really beautiful choose your own journey,
Yeah.
unlike a retreat where it's like, this is the itinerary and this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, like, I don't know if I want to do that. Or like, that kind of feels uncomfortable to me. It's like, you get to decide how you want this journey to look like for you. And I love that about this kind of organization.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've done a beautiful job. So anyone that's listening to this, you have to go to the Wild Rose Festival. It truly is. Like, I don't even think words can put to how transformational it is. It is amazing. And, I've been so lucky to be asked to be a facilitator there now for 2 years. So thank you. I love it. Going on my third year, I guess. But it's just, there's no words of the people that you meet and
Mhm.
the experiences that you have. And there's days where you find yourself not knowing why you're going to this workshop when you really should be going to this workshop, but you
Right.
just change plans, you manifest generate, go the opposite way. And it's the perfect landing. Like there's just, I don't know, it's so amazing.
Mhm.
And it is so, so healing on a way that I think is unexpected, right? Like
Yeah.
you leave tired, but you leave good tired. Like
Yeah.
really, it almost feels like when you go to the hospital and then you leave because you're exhausted because you just had to go through a healing process. But that's
Right.
kind of what this is like, but on a very much more healthier and healing scale.
Well, and I think you leave with just like so much like gratitude and you go, I think a lot of women will be like, I need to be able to like this is going to take a while for me to process all of the things that have happened. So that fatigue comes from a place of being like, I have, shifted so much that I need to kind of like land back down now. And so with knowing that and having that in mind, this year we're ending with a sound bath ceremony
Mm.
so that before you leave, you get to just drop in and rest and integrate so that process can start earlier so that women are not, jumping in their vehicles and then going back home to, their jobs or to their children or to their family or to whatever they're going back home to and being like, I don't feel grounded enough to like take on my real life at this
Yeah.
moment, right? And so we hope this year as we learn and we grow to give women that preemptive opportunity to be able to just like really begin that integration before they leave so that it's, they don't come home leaving feeling so, in the clouds or ungrounded, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think how I feel at least the foundation of this festival, how it started is really how it grows. In the
Yeah.
sense that this started off as a potluck to connect.
Yeah.
And even though this is now a 1,000-person festival, it is still, it really feels like that home cooked potluck, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
when you go to festivals and it can feel like just a lot of energy and it's a lot of go, and it's like, well, that was fun, but I didn't really have any takeaways. This feels like what you started off with, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what's really beautiful is that you've been able, even with growth, been able to hold that container, make that cauldron still all
Mm-hmm.
about the potluck
Yeah, the intimacy, right? The intimacy
connection.
and the connection. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's definitely always the foundation of how we make choices as we move forward and build and grow is like cultivating that those like spaces and places and experiences that all are about intimacy.
Hmm.
Because intimacy among women is something that is so missed,
It is.
right?
It's
And
so
I
hard to
think
come by.
it's so hard to come by. And like I sometimes forget, and um, I am so blessed. I have such an incredible, rich friend group around me of sisters and have for so many years now who are actually now like on the team organically, of course, right? Who hold this with me because we ourselves have this deep, intimate friendship and bond that is family, right? And we just yearn for other women to feel the same way. And
Mm.
so these are the spaces where you come to find your people.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
100% agree with that. So if people want to learn more about Wild Rose Festival or to get a ticket, because they're almost sold out, right?
Mhm.
You're almost at the end here. And
Yeah.
it's only a month away, people. Like this is
Yeah.
the time.
Mhm.
How do they find more information about Wild Rose?
So they can head to our website, wildrosesfestival.com, or they can explore our socials at Wild Roses Festival. Um, we have we have so much information on both our website and on our social media, and it helps for you to get like a good sense of who we are and what can be explored. And yeah, we have less than 100 tickets remaining, and would love, love, love to continue building a sisterhood. So.
Perfect. And I'll put all those links in the show notes below. But before I let you go, I always like to end these calls with a womb led tip. And so this is just a little tip that can be on anything, just for women to leave this call with something to integrate into their life.
Mm. Well, since we've been talking about the festival now, that's the only thing that's on my mind.
Yeah.
And just on my mind, period. Like we're
Let's be
coming up
real.
on here. But I think the biggest thing is really just tapping into your like exercising your intuition so that you can follow your autonomy and what feels good. And I always say this at the festival too, is that because there's so many paths to take, right? At the festival and in life at large, is just to really practice your gut instinct, your own intuitive feeling into what you need, right? And to yeah, really just like advocate for yourself and take the path maybe less traveled, take the path that maybe feels the most uncomfortable, but your gut, your soul so calling you to do it, and just trust.
Yeah.
And you'll end up with the experience that you need.
I love it. I love it. Kind of like the potluck story. Starting off with moon circles to then being like, I'm going to have a potluck to all of a sudden now running 1,000-person festival. So you never know what is going to come out of following your instincts.
100%.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Lauren. It's been so great having you on here. We're going to have you come back again to talk all about feminine herbs, how we can nourish our bodies as women with herbs, the essence of herbal magic, maybe even yoni steaming. Like that's another
Yes.
hot topic. There's so many. So you're
Would
coming
love
back at least one more time, maybe 10. So,
that.
all right. Thank you again.
Thanks, Kate.
Friends, have you had a chance to download my new free ebook? Maybe it's not you. The Truth on PMS and How You Can Take Back Control of Your Cycle is now available. This is truly a book that I think needs to be in the hands of every woman who struggles with the second half of their menstrual cycle. So if this is you, click on the link in the show notes and download your free copy today. And remember to subscribe to this podcast and share a review if you loved this episode. Until next time, remember, womb wisdom equals connection to self, which ultimately equals inspired living.